What's going on, everybody? WTIM here. I'm your host, Tad Al. So today we are doing different. I know I'm up, the sun's shining, so um, I got some glare going on. I'm sorry about this. I'm not at home, so I'm on the move doing my podcast. All the same, this is for. I did this same segment a couple of nights ago on my normal time. And for some reason, it was a 33-minute podcast. And they only allowed 2 minutes and 47 seconds of it, everybody. So that's why you have this is, I guess you would call a special, you know. But anyhow, I will still be coming back on I try to go Sunday nights between 9 and 10. I'm thinking about moving to Monday night, um, just to give people something to think about as they go through the week. Um, Either or. So it's I started with Sunday night, so I think I'm gonna stick with Sunday night between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. But anyway, this is Epic God Studio Radio. WTIM. I am your host, Tad Al. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. It is free. We bring issues to the table that we are dealing with from one day to the next on a daily basis. I encourage people to always, you know, respond, ask questions. Even if you're not live with me, you can um, send a message. I will address it. Um, Again, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And let's move on. Let's get to the subject, man. Today we are talking about friend or foe. That is the subject today. You know, when you think about friend or foe, let's look at if you go over all your life, in your lifetime, um, tallying up everybody that you've met over the course of your life. Everybody, friends, school, elementary school, middle school, high school, on the job, um, events, church, uh, boyfriends, girlfriends, how out of all of these people on both your hands, if you add this up on both your hands, can you add up how many people have actually had your best interest at heart? That's the friend or foe tally that we're doing here today. And when you think about it, we're not counting mothers and fathers because for the most part, for many of us, we believe that our mothers or our fathers, some of them even, they cross some lines or whatever. But for the most part, you believe that a mother and a father will pretty much have your best interest in heart. I know as I was growing up, while my mom, when she was still alive, all my men always, certain mail that I wanted to go, like I didn't want it necessarily to come to me. It would go to my mother's house, so that, that was, how that go. I trusted my mom. I trusted my mom with everything, anything that I needed to trust my mother with, that's who dealt with it, paperwork, information concerning me, money, things that need signed. You feel like your mother will do. Even my father, I believe my father. I believe he will. My dad would act in my best interest. Um, wait a minute, because you're talking about my son. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, and so we're talking about people that you've come across in your lifetime. How many of them truly have your best interest at heart? You know, when you look at sports, one of the main sports I look at when we're talking about this is boxing. But you have basketball, you have football. Boxing is one of the sports that I really look at because you have trainers, managers, and coaches. You have at least these three people are in your corner. And like, you go out here and you fight, and the bell rings and the round is over. You come back, you almost take a butt whipping in the corner. But when you go back to the corner, they're talking to you. Hey, man, you know what I'm saying? You got to duck. You got to get out the way. He's throwing this, and you're trusting these people to see this, you know, um, what's going on in there so they can tell you, what to do when you go back out. Um, when you look at sports like football, you know, um, your teammates that you're out there on the field with, but how far does it go? Like when you look at this situation that just happened with the young boy, Shador Sanders, it became a thing, never been in trouble in school. So, I've never been in trouble off the field, should I say. Good grades. It was beyond me to see how the one kid, Travis Hunter, got drafted second in the draft. And then they waited to the fifth round to draft the Shador boy, and I'm like, dog, what's that about? And even though the Hunter kid, he can play both sides of the ball, it was weird to me how they did it, because all of his highlights were of him catching passes and what he did. But the thing was, all the highlights they were showing, as far as like the passes and things were concerned, he wouldn't who threw that pass. That's what I was looking at. Who threw that pass to him? They show some of his defensive highlights because he can play both sides of the ball. But my thing was, who threw the ball to you? For you to be able to, you know, uh, make the run and the shake and the juke, you had to catch it first. So it was weird. It was really weird. But that goes into the friend or foe thing. Um, when you're dealing with other teammates. I was just watching something the other night where the Pistons were playing the Knicks, and Cat Williams got tied up with a kid from the Pistons, and it looked like they were about to get into a fight. But Kay Cunningham came and shoved the boy out the way, like, "Nah, we ain't," because he looked like he was about to. And I don't know. I don't think that it was a purposeful trip. I think they got literally. It was. I believe it was an honest tie up, but it seemed like a hard foul. And but his own teammate, pushed him out the way. But that's in the sense of, hey, look, you're not going to hurt the team. We're not doing that. Other teammates, they'll stand strong and fight with you. But that could have went either way as far as the team was concerned. But when you look past the team, when you look at the money situation of it, you know, um, I've seen people say that they don't want to play. They're not playing another game for this team. And they want to be traded somewhere else. They want to go somewhere else and play. And I've seen a lot of this going on. And this all falls into friend or foe, and this is where most of people's issues are coming from in life. It's dealing with other people. So you have to ask yourself, who's my friend and who's really my foe? Even when you look at relationship situations, some people, they're not really there for your best interest. They most people are after something from you. They don't just come out and be like, yeah, well, this is my ultimate purpose for being around you. Prime example. One of the things that I talk to females about is men being in their homes. I've had females actually get upset with me, and nah, he should be able to come to my house and boo. But honestly, why is this man in your home? That's what you have to ask yourself. If there's a guy that's in your home, why is he truly here? Why is he sitting here in my house? What's his purpose? Because a real man, like you take me for instance, I'm not coming to hang out in a female's home when I have my own house. That's just that's I'm a father. I'm a father. I have my own home that I went out here, I worked for, I bought it. I've got my own vehicles and everything like that. There's no reason for me to come hang out at your house as a man. That's and I think females need to really look at that, because as a friend or a foe, if he's your friend, and especially if you have children, what's his purpose of coming over your house kicking his feet up? What's he really here for? You know, because as a man is going to our jobs, and I just had this talk with a friend of mine the other day. You have to provide. That's one of your first jobs. You provide, and you have a house. Then you protect. I don't think you're gonna let somebody just come in and do something to the woman in your house or your family. So you're protecting them. And then you have it's a man's job to present a pathway for spirituality to a creator, to a higher being. Whether you believe in God, Allah, Buddha, whoever you believe in, you know, it's your job as a man to set that pathway for your family to get to this higher power. That's your job. You're supposed to present that to them, and that, like I was telling my friend, he was saying his friend, she was going somewhere to do something, to do like a revival or something like that. And he's like, well, you ain't been doing no revival and all this. And I'm like, okay, sometimes people they get into a position to where they are not feeling um they're faced with issues in their lives, and they're looking for a certain way out. For instance, take some guys, they go to prison or they go to jail. Some of them, when they get to jail, they they haven't they don't know what's about to happen to them. They have a couple months before court goes down. Like P Diddy, for instance, right now he's in prison or he's in jail. And a lot of guys, they'll seek God. Oh, I need your help. Lord, I'm going through this. This is happening, and I'm sorry. And, please help me. Please get me out of this. And they start reading the Bible and everything like that. So sometimes, especially in times of need, people, they look for spiritual guidance. And I'm not saying that anything is wrong with that. A lot of times God wants you to look for him when you fall, you know. So it's totally natural. But if you as a man are not offering this to your family, you can't fault them really when they seek it out elsewhere, because it's something that you're not giving them, you know, and so you have to look at that, is when you're dealing with somebody, or you're dealing with a guy, or you're dealing with a female, is are you getting this spiritual fulfillment out of what you're doing, you know um, do you spiritually feel comfortable with that person, you know, or do you feel like that person is part of the whole scheme to bring you down? This is a friend or foe thing. That's why we have, this segment coming right now. And on jobs, you have people, they act like they're your friend on the job, and next thing you know, hey man, this person wrote me up. Like, are you serious? You wrote me up, and you just thought that you guys were really, really cool. But and they might be doing it to get ahead of you on the job, you know. Um, so it's like when you look at it, even the Bible says, "Save yourself from this untoward generation." It says that, and it's something to keep in mind. You know, every civilization has had the story of the flood. Every single one. From the Mayans on down. Asians, everybody. Let's just look at our story of the flood. Noah's Ark. Okay. Something to keep in mind right here is only 8 people survived the flood out of the whole world. Is only 8 people survived. That's really, really weird to me. I can't speak for everybody, but to me, it's like, wow, only 8 people survived the whole thing, out of the whole world. You know, so when you look at that, look at how many people we're talking. There's almost 4 trillion people, 4 billion people, or something like that in this world. I'll have to get that, but out of all of these people here, you know, like I listened to this guy Geno Jennings. A lot of people get upset with him, because of the stuff he preaches. But hey man, listen. I tell people all the time, tell me something that this man is saying wrong, I'll stop listening to him today. But anything he says, he comes straight from the book, the Bible, with it. And I'm like, hey man, like, and everybody doesn't believe in the Bible, and that's fine. That again, that's your choice. But you're gonna have to believe in something, especially the times that we're living in right now. I mean, like it's we're not able to do this thing by ourselves. You know, but even listening to that, when I listen to him, I'm like, okay, this dude he's kicking truth. But you got to look back at all of the prophets that we've had. All of them have been killed, like killed. Like even when John the Baptist, they beheaded him. Like nobody was cool with a lot of these prophets. They didn't like them. Paul, they stoned him. Jesus, they hung him on the cross. Martin Luther King, they shot and killed him. Malcolm X shot and killed him. I don't know how if people look at them as prophets or not, but this is what happens, especially when truth is coming out. So you have to look at the friend or foe situation because a lot of times, most people that do something or something happens to them, it happens from somebody in most cases. I mean, like, I, I I have no reason right now to go to Arkansas and commit a crime on somebody in Arkansas. I don't even know you. I don't know where you live. I don't know who your parents are. I don't know who your brother is. Your brother's never done anything to me. So I literally have no reason to go do that. You have some people that, will, they will, you know, sit and do just random crimes. They rob a bank and somebody in the bank, they end up having to kill them. They tried to be heroic, in the bank robbery. Something like that happens. The World Trade Centers, that was random. Of people that you didn't even know. Uh, I mean, so these things, they do happen, but it's not something that just happens automatically. Most people, in most cases, the person. Even when a crime is committed, it's scoped out. This is the crime I'm going to commit. That's why in the courtroom they call it premeditation. So when you look at these things and you're looking at this friend or foe situation, how many people are you honestly able to sit here and say, hey, this person is on my side? This person wants to see the best for me. This person, look, a lot of the fathers that were, that they show up. A child makes it to the NBA or the NFL or something like that. Then the father wants to show up. He becomes a great music artist. Oh, that's my son. Well, wait a minute, man. I haven't seen you, man, since I was 4 years old. You know, now I'm 23 and you and talk about this, my son, and so, is that a friend or foe? I mean, you gotta look at it. Sometimes you have parents that they help you with your homework, when another parent didn't think nothing about helping you. You have cousins, that that hey, they just keep hitting you up for money. Let me get this, cuz, let me get that, cuz, and they get their little money, you can't find them, and that happens. That's not just cousins, brothers and sisters, and aunts, uncles. It's the stuff that goes on. Um, I've been blessed to have a really close knit family. And I'm thankful for that. I really am. And then you also have to look too. Some people they're not really there to actually hurt you. They just don't know how to be any much better to you than what they're being. You know, so you have to weigh that as well. Is that part of friend or foe? And if some of it, I don't think falls under the friend or foe situation, but you know you still have to look at it. You have to weigh it out, because a lot of this has to do with your level of success in life. Where are you going? Who are you being true to? Are you being true to a friend, or are you being true to a foe? I promise you, if you're being true to a foe, somebody that's trying to see you come down, which in most cases many people are, this is why you're not going any further. A lot of time, man, I look over my life in a lot of cases, and because I cut a lot of stuff out of my life, I've been able to go further, you know, and not just a lot of stuff, a lot of people too, and I've heard people they've had problems, man. Oh, he funny acting now, like, and it's not that. It's just it's when you don't have anything in common, when you sit back and you look at a person and you realize, hey, look, me and this person, we really don't have nothing in common. You know, it's not that you don't love them or you don't, you know, you don't want to be bothered with them or anything like that. It's just that, they're living their life, you're living yours. And sometimes, a lot of people would rather have you exactly how they know you. You might make a change in life. Hey, man, look, I'm not, I'm not trying to do drugs anymore. I'm not trying to, well, that don't set well with them. Oh well, all the drugs I done gave you, and so now you want to be this, well, okay, well, you owe me, and that people get like that. Trust you me, they get like that, but you got to forgive yourself. That's part of forgiving yourself as well, and more so than anybody else, and then you gotta look at how people move. Like, are people moving in your best interest? Look at all these celebrities and things that we have out here. I mean, when we look at the state of us as a people, can you really say a person that has all this African stuff and everything? And I went through a situation one time where a person, actually, when I was trying to start my trucking company, and the people literally went and tried to sabotage my company. It was a husband and a wife, and they literally tried to sabotage it. They acted like they were my friends, and They were like, yeah, we can do this and we can do that. So when we started setting my company up, they turned around and they called and said, this address he's using is not valid. That's what they told him. And I'm like, oh wow. Like really? And oh, okay, So even when that's happening, you have to look at who you dealing with. Was that something with that and they had ulterior motives on this before they even decided they wanted to try to help me get my business going. So it costed me a lot of money, but I was still able to do it, thank God. But it still costed. It costed a lot of money. So when here we are today, and these people, they had all the African stuff up in their house, and they had some African clothing, statues and things like that. And they were acting like they were so pro-African, but it was my people, my own people, that tried to sabotage me in the long run. And that hurt my feelings, because I'm like, I never did nothing to you, but it's neither here nor there. Even when you look at like I think, and I said something about this the other day, when on my last podcast, Floyd Mayweather was sitting there with $28 million in jewelry in front of him. Now come on, $28 million in jewelry, man. Like, and again, I'm not telling somebody, man, get your jewelry, do your thing. But if you got 20, now I'm just gonna run this down. If you have $28 million in jewelry sitting in front of you, and what I did in my last podcast, I talked about it, and I've even shared it on Facebook. I had pictures of um manufacturing plants, pharmaceutical companies, steel companies, lumber companies, concrete companies, all of these, manufacturing plants. And I said, there's nobody in my culture that owns any of these manufacturing plants, and you have to ask yourself, we as a people are not a brand. When you have a brand, the fight is different when it comes down to what you're fighting for. You know, um, if when I say a brand, I'm talking about like Apple, Microsoft, Merck's Global, uh, Ford, you know, even Tesla. All of these are brands. These are brands. So when you come to these people and you're looking at their fight is much different than $28 million in jewelry. $28 million in jewelry, you might wake up and not even feel like putting any of it on, and you got $28 million of it. Rick Ross had $10 million in jewelry. That's 38 million in itself. Then he had 100 cars. He had a car show with 100 cars in his front lawn, 100 of his cars in his front lawn. One car, you had Bentleys out there, Lamborghinis, Ferraris. These cars, at minimum, were $250,000 a piece. So you had 100 cars out there. That means 4 cars was $1 million. At $250,000, that's a million. That's a million. That's $1 million right there. So if you easily take 50 cars, you're almost at 10 million right there. So if you haven't even already passed it. The thing is, you take the 10 million in jewelry, you take the 28 million in jewelry with Floyd Mayweather, and then you take the 100 cars on the front lawn. That's 50 million right there. You don't think you can take $50 million and go to a bank and set up some kind of one of these manufacturing plants and help your community, help your culture out? And then we sit up here and we say, "Oh, just like you take Floyd Mayweather, he probably has made more boxes. Everybody don't want a box. What if I just want to cook? What if I just want to cook food? I'm not even saying I want a restaurant. I just want to cook. What if I want to learn how to do that? What if I want to be an actor? You can't take and build this building and put in one corner of the building a acting studio. I mean, they even said Tyler Perry is he made his studios, but they said he don't really want to pay the people for the acting. And you got some people, and I don't know. I'm not gonna knock him because I don't know the whole story behind that. I'm going off of the interviews that I've seen with Monique, um, even Cat Williams. I've seen videos with that. But at the end of the day, whether it's true or not, that you don't want to pay people, like, why is it coming out? You know, um, so when you look at this, it's like, are we truly helping each other? I mean, honestly, ask yourself on a friend or foe basis. If you're sitting here with $28 million, look at our struggle, you all. And if you look at your struggle, you look at my struggle, even when you're doing, some of us are doing pretty good in life, we're doing okay. But if you look at it and you look at the struggle that you're going through, and then you sit here and you see somebody with $28 million in jewelry sitting in front of them, and you're going through what you're going through. Is that your friend or is that your foe? Check that. Listen, y'all, I'm not going to hold you up any longer. I'm your host, Tad Al. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I love you all. Hope to see you at the next podcast coming out. Hit me up, y'all. Love you. I'm Tad Al. I'm out. Mwah.